Welcome to here to Rock Show Critique for another episode of Ranking the Albums. And today we pick a group that has 20 studio albums to their name here, to their credit, none other than Kiss. And to help me do that today, I'm bringing in none other than Mr. David Hens. Welcome.
Thanks again. Yep. Well, this was an interesting one to do because Kiss is one of those bands that they're probably overrated and underrated at the same time. So
Yeah, you could look at it from both sides for sure on this one. Definitely, a lot of it I think has to do when you came into the picture into liking Kiss or you know catching up to finding out about them. That's always interesting. So for me, I'll start first. Basically, I would say it was about the Destroyer era is when I first learned of them and got into them. That was back with Beth. I remember my friend, one of our rankers actually, Jim Boz. He used to have these headphones, and he put on his Kiss record, and he deciphered the lyrics to Beth because he loved that song so much. Back then some of the albums didn't always come with the lyrics, so he was able to do that. It's something he liked to do, and that's kind of where my starting point with Kiss is, and then from there, obviously, album after album, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun, they just became bigger and bigger, and they made a movie and so many concert specials on TV and comic books. I mean, these guys were like the first band to really get into this whole marketing aspect of so many different things. And I think that really did help them. I remember getting those Kiss cards. I mean, you don't see anybody out there nowadays with Foo Fighters cards, do you? No.
no.
Kiss, man, they used to have their own cards, all these complete sets. And man, and everybody at school would always bring them in and try to trade them. And it was interesting. Back in the day, it's hard to believe how far these guys have come since those days. But yeah, Kiss also holds a special place to me because it was the first real rock concert that I ever seen, a real rock group, and that was on the Animalized tour back in '84. One of my friends got us tickets through 97 Rock. His brother was Larry Norton's paper boy, believe it or not, and he ended up getting us tickets, and we got, man, unbelievable seats at the old odd there to see Kiss and Queensryche. And ever since that time of seeing them, even though it wasn't with the makeup, because at that point they didn't have it on, but I was
Mhm.
definitely really enjoying that era of Kiss. And that's another thing. There's a lot of different eras here with this band. You got the makeup era, well, the first makeup era, then you got the non-makeup era, and then you got the makeup coming back on, the reunions. There's just so much to this band. It's just unbelievable. So why don't you explain to everybody how you got into Kiss or familiar with them here?
The first Kiss CD I ever had was actually the Unplugged album. So, and then once I got that, I went back and listened to the catalog that came before that. So, I was never a huge fan, but I think I liked the idea of the presentation when I was a kid, and that kind of got me into it. So with the fire and this the demon character and everything. So and I didn't get to see them until 2004, which obviously I mean Gene and Paul were the only ones left, but it was still a great show. So and I think the idea of Kiss as a commodity has become kind of the thing that a lot of people dislike about it because it kind of overshadows the music in a lot of ways. And I think the fact that people think Gene just tries to make money off of literally everything, that's kind of overshadowed just how good a lot of those early records were. But it's worked for him. I mean, they have Kiss caskets, so he's doing something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it definitely, unbelievable what these guys have accomplished throughout their career, and it's still going. They're getting close to it. The pandemic obviously pushed back. They were supposed to call it a day back in 2020, 2021 area. And because of the pandemic, everything got shut down. They pushed forward after they were able to get back out there. And They haven't given us a final dates yet, but the rumor has it they're going to do a final show in New York City somewhere. So we'll see how that all shakes down. But in the meantime, we're going to go through the albums chronologically here and talk about each one, and then at the end here we'll rank them all and give everybody what we came here for, to see where your favorite Kiss album falls. So we're going to start it off here with none other than the first album, which was released back in February of 1974. Of course, it was just called Kiss. Not bad. It reached number 87 on the charts. Not bad for a brand new band at that time that really hit the charts that high. Um, you know, and it went gold. And what do you got on the first Kiss album for us here?
Yeah, I like this album a lot. I think had I been around in the '70s as a kid, I might have like a more of an emotional connection to the band, just because that's depending on when you came into the band, it's going to be what kind of period you like. But
Hmm.
and I never really, I mean, like I understand the band has the cult following that they've always had, but I mean, I've never been a fan to that extreme. But I mean, the songs on this album, I mean, Deuce is classic, Strutter is great, Nothing to Lose, Cold Gin, Black Diamond. I mean, I love the songs. The only thing I would say about this album is the production. It's a little stark, but I mean, like the versions of these songs on Kiss Alive are definitely superior to the studio versions, but the it's I can put this album on anytime and get into it. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point here. These early albums, because obviously, even though they charted, all these albums charted and sold some, respectable numbers at the time, for a new band, and especially as badly as the critics gave these guys in the beginning. The critics just trashed these guys, saying that they wouldn't even last past one album and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just amazing. It was a live album that really broke them, really,
mhm.
and and from there it was just all like they were going on a rocket ride.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first album, I mean, they wrote a lot of their biggest songs on this album, believe it or not, songs that they still do to this day in concert. Amazingly, as it may seem, it seems like Strutter's definitely one of the fan favorites for sure, and they always play Black Diamond. That's another big
Mhm.
one that they were even playing that in the non-makeup era. That was like one of that and Cold Gin were the two mainstays during the non-makeup era. And you know, at the Firehouse, Nothing to Lose, Deuce they've used as an opener. I mean, just amazing. How this album did for them for their first album. They wrote some really good songs on this
Mhm.
one. So yeah, definitely one of the band's strongest albums, and many fans cite this one as the album that they like most. Many of them say that. You see all the rankings out there. This is one of the higher ranking ones compared to most, but we'll see how it falls for us. And believe it or not, their second album, Hotter Than Hell, comes out later that same year in October of '74. Doesn't do as good on the charts. Managed to peak at number 100. Still went gold. And what do you got for us on Hotter Than Hell? What's your take on that one?
Yeah, there's some pretty good songs on here. Parasite is great. Coming Home, Going Blind, the title track. I mean, I don't know if the songs aren't as catchy as the first album, but you can definitely tell that they were starting to find themselves like as a band and getting a little more developed with their musicianship. So, which I think is something that gets lost by, I mean, people think of Kiss as just the costumes and kind of like the style over the substance, but I mean, at least for those early albums, they were actually focused on writing good material. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Hotter Than Hell. Obviously, it's not as solid as the first album. I feel overall, but like you said, it's not a bad follow up. Usually on the everybody always cites it as the sophomore jinx. In this case, yeah, the music isn't as standoutish perhaps as the first album. It's got a little bit more filler in my estimation on this one compared to the first album, and it's definitely it's cool. Going Blind is an interesting song. That's
Mhm.
definitely probably what I would call probably my favorite song off the album. Coming Home's another great one. Let Me Go Rock and Roll is pretty cool. The way Gene and Paul both take turns on that one there. Overall though, it's a decent second album. You can't go wrong there. That's for sure. So there we go with Hotter Than Hell. And then that's going to take us to early 75, March of 75 to be exact, when they come out with Dressed to Kill. And the album obviously features them all dressed up in these suits.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting. And this is the album where they got their big anthem there, the anthem that pretty much that they're known for worldwide. And, the song that they always usually close the show out with, you know, the one that, that was a song that was whoever, that was the one. That's the one that Rock and Roll All Night is the one we're talking about, man. You can't always write a good anthem song every day, man, but they hit the nail on the head with that one. And here we are, you know, 40, 48 years later, it's amazing how that song is just stood the test of time. And what do you got for us on Dress to Kill?
Yeah, I mean, Dress to Kill, it's okay. I mean, obviously, Rock and Roll All Night. I think the live version is still superior, but I mean, obviously, I think my favorite song off the album is probably Rock Bottom. I think that's the one that stands out to me now. But I love Ace Frehley's guitar tone and his playing on those early records. I mean, for me, that's what made Kiss's sound.
Hmm.
Not just about the makeup. He brought the fire with his guitar playing. So
Yeah, I mean, I definitely find that this album has very similar to Hotter Than Hell in some aspects because there's a few weaker tracks on here, as opposed to, you got your gem in Rock and Roll All Night. And another gem I feel on this one too is Come On and Love Me. I just love that song. Always have loved that song. She was another standout that you would see live in concert every now and then. Like I said, Rock Bottom was another one that appeared on many of their compilations and everything else. But it's just I don't think, in my estimation, they haven't topped the first album yet, but I think that will be remain to be coming here for sure. All right, and that's going to take us to 1976, and that is going to bring out Destroyer. All right, so what do you got us? What do you got for us on this album here?
yeah, I mean, this one you can definitely tell this is where they put the record company put a lot of money into the production. The songs just sound bigger and ready to explode out of your speakers when you put it on. I mean, Detroit Rock City kicks the album off. It's excellent. King of the Nighttime World is great. God of Thunder. I mean, shout it out loud. Do You Love Me? I mean, Bob Ezrin produced the album and he was able to get the best out of their playing, and he really made them, gave them that signature sound. So, I mean, it's considered widely one of their greatest albums by most people, but we'll see if how it ranks on our list. But
It's almost like giving it away there a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, but I agree. This is, definitely the songs are stronger. The singing is better. The production is phenomenal. Especially the beginning where they got the radio going for Detroit Rock City and the introduction to it, unbelievable. And I really like how Detroit Rock City ends, and then you go right into King of the Nighttime World. That's just nothing beats that. That's probably one of the best 1-2 punches in all of rock and roll for sure. Um, King of the Nighttime World, definitely a very, in my opinion, underrated, very underrated song. I think that even the band themselves, they they've played it over the years, but not as much as they should. That's definitely a powerhouse live song that they should be playing almost, every time they're out there. But yeah, and then I think the three songs that end the album end it in unbelievable style with "Shout It Out Loud," "Beth," and "Do You Love Me." Those three songs together
Mhm.
really, really do this album so well the way it ends here. And you got some weird stuff with this "Great Expectations." It's kind of a unique song for them, but it definitely that's a song I think for me it was always what I called the weakest song on the album, because it was different. But
Mhm.
I've come to really appreciate it over the years. That one and "Sweet Pain," those two, they may for me be like the lowest, the two weaker songs on the album, but by no means are they bad songs. They're really, really decent. But everything else, how many songs have you seen them play in concert? You know, Probably like over half the albums still played live to this day, and that says something. Considering they got 20 albums out to choose from. All right, and then oddly enough, you'd think, yeah, they put all their eggs in one basket for that one, and then they still were able to come up with another album later on in 1976, and that would be "Rock and Roll Over." And "Rock and Roll Over" went platinum, and just to touch back on "Destroyer" real quick, that one was their first platinum studio album, going double platinum to this day. I would have to think that album sold more than double at this point. They probably just never got
Mhm.
recertified, because that one is definitely one of those albums that you'd figure would be like up closer to 10 million at this point.
Mhm.
Anybody that's a Kiss fan would have that album for sure, even if they didn't have the whole collection. So "Rock and Roll Over," November of '76. You know, pretty much like 7 months after Destroyer came out. I mean, it's just amazing how good Destroyer did, and they went out on tour and everything, and then all of a sudden, here's "Rock and Roll Over" coming out. You just don't see that from bands anymore. You never see anybody make albums that fast. Do you think that helps sell the album back in that time period by coming out with like two albums a year for a little bit? Did that, you think, help play into everything because they were such a hot commodity at that point?
I think
Building.
they, yeah, I think it definitely helped. I think the record company wanted to strike while the band was hot. So, I mean, yeah, in order to stay relevant, they had to keep putting out material. I mean, like bands today, they'll go like 5 or 6 years without putting out anything, and that's just ridiculous. So,
It really is, especially with all they claim that they got all these new tools now to make albums and
mhm.
everything, and yet you don't see anybody make one album a year, or no one
Mhm.
hardly ever makes a studio album back to back years anymore. You'd be lucky if
Mhm.
you get an album by a regular band out there that can sell albums. You're lucky if you get another album once every 3 years. That's just
Yeah.
really ridiculous. It really is. You're right. And then you wonder why none of these newer bands have the staying power.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's some of it. You got to be relevant. You got to get out there and keep your name out there during the 3 year period when you're not putting out new music, because people kind of forget about you.
Mhm.
So, what do you got for the "Rock and Roll Over" here?
Yeah, this is another solid album. It clocks in at about 33 minutes, which is like the perfect sweet spot for them. I mean, I think they really don't waste any time. I mean, like "Calling Dr. Love" is obviously a big hit for Gene here, and "Hard Luck Woman" was a great vocal by Peter Criss. And also marked the first time they started working with Eddie Kramer as a producer, so he would work with them for a few subsequent albums after this. And it's a tight collection. I think it's definitely holds up.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. This is, I think that definitely, "Calling Dr. Love," like you said, "Mr. Speed" is one of the underrated songs on the album. I really enjoy that one. "Hard Luck Woman," obviously, that one is also known for, isn't that the one that Garth Brooks did on the
Mhm.
Kiss tribute album? And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, just a solid opens up with "I Want You." You got "Ladies Room." "Making Love." There's a lot of really good songs on this album. There's a few on here that maybe escaped some of it because the other ones are so much better. But but overall, I think definitely a pretty solid album. Pretty solid album. So that's going to take us to good old 1977. And what came out in that year? None other than Love Gun. Another album produced by Eddie Kramer. What do you got for Love Gun? That was one of those uh, cool albums here.
Yeah, I love this album. The first time I saw them, they opened with the title track, and it was just a killer opener, and that's great. Christine 16 is obviously notable for this album. Plaster Caster's great. Shock Me is great. Just another one where they really there's like no filler on this album. Like all those early albums, they kept them so tightly created that there was really no time to waste. So, and as you'll see with some of the later stuff, they get a little long winded. So not every song is as memorable as the like a few, but on those early albums, at least in the '70s, there was every song was solid. So
Yeah, so this album also only went platinum. I find that one hard to believe as well. I just don't understand. That was one of their biggest albums for sure. And obviously, Love Gun, when they weren't opening with it, it always seemed to be the main song. Paul would kind of like do his little banter, during concert. He would always talk about something, and that was the song he used to use to do that with. Pretty cool. First time I ever seen him. It was pretty unique. Crazy Nights tour too. He really just some really good stuff here. I mean, you mentioned I Stole Your Love. Shock Me, obviously. This is actually the first vocal performance that we see recorded out of Ace Frehley at this point, believe it or not, which is kind of hard to believe considering these guys would all make individual solo albums pretty much right after this album. So it's kind of weird that Ace would actually do his own album when he didn't even hardly, this is the only song he had recorded up to that point. So that just goes to show you how much confidence they had, or either whoever made the decision, himself or whoever, they had the confidence in him being able to make an album, you know,
mm-hmm.
based upon one vocal performance. um, yeah, I mean, Love Gun. I mean, I feel there is some filler on here near towards the end of the album. Um, but it's a pretty solid album for the first 2/3 of it, I'd say. Definitely, one of the band's better albums by a mile for sure. So that takes us to, they did the solo albums in '78, so that's why they had a little bit of a break there. And then in '79, they come up with a departure in a way with Dynasty here. This is kind of where, the band kind of does a little different things here. Dynasty did reach number 9, which is pretty good for an album that doesn't really get a lot of love from the fans. Really, this is the one album where I Was Made for Loving You. Obviously, is the song that many people say turned them off on Kiss at this point because it's a disco influence here, and they didn't really have a lot of other songs that made it on the radio from this album. So, but think about it though, they still went platinum, and this was certified platinum pretty much when it came out. So, to reach number 9, with the bass basically off the one song, really, and to go platinum at that point, considering that was when disco was starting to hit big, which is one of the reasons why they kind of did that song. It was a pretty good feat. They would try to mimic this later on with another album based upon what was going on in the music scene, but that one fell really, really flat, unfortunately. But this one, not bad. What do you got for us on this one?
Yeah, for me, Dynasty is kind of where they started to take a bit of a dive, but I just don't find it as compelling. I just naturally I'm just going to like the harder edged rock stuff, but it's not all terrible. The I Was Made for Loving You, it's kind of a fun song to see live, but and then Dirty Living is pretty solid. The 2000 Man is the Rolling Stones cover that Ace sings on this one. That's pretty good, but again, I don't know. It's ranked low for a reason. So I mean,
Eh,
it's not one I would go back and listen to too often.
true. When you got 20 albums of an artist, there's going to be other albums that you're going to go back to a lot more frequently for sure. And I'm with you on this one. I feel the same way with Dynasty. I'm not really never really sold on it. A lot of filler. But over the years, I've come to appreciate Hard Times, Save Your Love, and I've always liked Sure Know Something. But I think that song to me is even better nowadays than I used to. I mean, I always liked it, but now I like it a lot more. And like you said, 2000, man, nothing like that one. I don't know if you ever got a chance to hear it live, but there's some bootlegs from the Unmasked era or the Dynasty. I think it was on the Unmasked tour. He played it. They played it live. Man, it sounds really good there too. So, so that is Dynasty, and then this is the era where they finally, like you said, took a dive here. Unmasked is the next album, and this is a lot of bickering and in-house fighting starts here, and there's always a lot of things going on here. Oh, Peter didn't play on the album, and this, that, and everything else, and this is the era of Kiss. These three albums here, where if anything else could have happened differently, who knows what could have happened with these guys. But there's always peaks and valleys with a lot of these type bands. You've seen it with Aerosmith. Just another good anecdote here. It happens, these guys got so big, and you start running into some problems. So Unmasked came out in '80, reached only number 35, which would be the worst charting album going back to Dress to Kill, pretty much around that era. It only went gold, and believe it or not, I actually dig this album. What about you? What's your take on Unmasked here?
Yeah, it's kind of a middle of the pack album for me for them. I mean, the '80s for Kiss is pretty up and down. At least, I mean, they were just wildly inconsistent with their productions and what kind of sound they were going for. Every album kind of had its own vibe, so there wasn't a lot of just consistency from album to album, depending on who was producing it and who was playing on it. But Unmasked, it's okay. I mean, I can't. Honestly, there's not really a song on there that sticks out to me. I mean, maybe like "Talk to Me," I had marked down as one that kind of was okay, but it's just kind of unmemorable.
Yeah, this is one of the albums I think, like you said, you didn't really first time you got to see him was 2004, so that was well
Mhm.
after the fact. So,
Yeah.
this is probably one that later fans probably maybe not even really purchased, because of
Mhm.
hearing all the reviews. And you got to remember, a lot of these fans, they might get into an album, buy it because of the reviews, or because they know a couple really good songs on an album. But like you said, Unmasked, that's another one that never really got much airplay at all on the radio, because the whole music scene was changing at that point. And the song that was actually released as the first single was
Shandy.
Shandy. Yeah, Shandy was the first song that was released. I mean, it did reach up to number 47 on the charts, which actually isn't too bad, considering you're dealing with the whole scene changing with everything.
Mhm.
But then they didn't really have a good follow up. Talk to Me was released, and then Tomorrow. But in my estimation, Tomorrow actually is one of my favorite songs on this album. Um, is That You is another. That's the album kickoff. That one kicks the whole album off. I love that song. Tomorrow is a really strong song for me. Uh, Gene's Naked City. I really like that. I love that riff. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff later on towards the last four, four or five songs of the album that were, You're All That I Want is a standout. I will say that was another one there that stood out for me a little bit. But for the most part, um, it's not the Kiss that the fans were used to at this point, and you can clearly see, with them saying that Peter, wasn't really there for the recessions and all these other things that were going on with it at the time. you could see why there was a lot of weird things going on, because those four guys, when the original four were there, they were all writing, they were all singing and doing this and doing that, and doesn't seem to be a lot of cohesion on this album.
Mm.
So that is Unmasked. And then if you really want to throw your fan base into a downward spiral here, let's release the Elder, folks. 1981. Never went gold, never went anything. Reached number 75, basically probably off their name alone, which is pretty good considering the album really, doesn't have anything that really got much in the way of airplay. Although I will say, "World Without Heroes" is probably the song that most people know because it was on the Unplugged album. That's a Gene song. It did reach number 56 on the singles charts, but after that, it was pretty much all downhill, and nobody was at that time. Nobody wanted to hear a Kiss concept album. I mean, I know a lot of people have said that they've grown to appreciate it more as time has gone on now, but come on, there's no way it's going to stack up to some of their phenomenal albums of the
Mm.
past. At least I know for me, it's not never did. So, but let's hear it from you. Let's see what your take is on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. People have a way of trying to revise the past, like make it seem the album's not as bad as they thought it was at the time. But for this album, I think it is that bad. But yeah, the idea of Kiss making a concept album with orchestral arrangements and stuff, it's just that's not what people wanted from Kiss. I mean, even like Bob Ezrin came back to produce this album, and even he has said that he was doing so much cocaine at the time that he wasn't really focused, like to the degree that he should have been. So I think that may have played into why the finished product is not that great. But yeah, it's just I don't know nothing about this album really interests me at all. It's just not what I want to hear from Kiss. So
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I know, and there's a lot of people I know who really love this song, this album, and certain songs on it. But come on, there's no way it's as good as Destroyer or Rock and Roll Over or Love Gun. It's not even in the same ballpark, unfortunately. As you will see from our rankings, from at least the little teaser that we just gave you here. But man, 1982, things really take a shift here. Kiss is back, and they love it loud now. All of a sudden, what do you think? Creatures of the Night. What a powerful album. What do you got? What do you got on this one here for us?
I love this album. I mean, for me, it's the perfect Kiss album. Every song is great. I mean, I love it loud. War Machine is excellent. Creatures of the Night, Saint and Sinner, Rock and Roll Hell. Just they brought the heaviness back. They were focused. They seemed like they were they put all that the previous 3 or 4 records behind them, and they were ready to get back to what made them popular to begin with. So, like I just picked up the 40th anniversary reissue of this album, where they remastered it, and then they included a second disc that had some outtakes and some live cuts from the '82 tour, and it's great. So, I mean, for me, it holds up as well as any Kiss album.
Yeah, it's the Creatures of the Night. I mean, that's when I first heard "I Love It Loud," I heard it in passing one night on the radio. I'm going, what the heck? This sounds pretty cool. Or who the hell is this? And when they said Kiss, I almost like, what, Kiss? Especially considering the previous 3 albums. You never expected to hear them come back like this, like the way they did. But obviously, this is also the first album to feature Eric Carr on drums, and of course, Vinnie Vincent had played a big hand on this album. With the writing and everything, since even though Ace appeared on the cover,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's credited, but he doesn't play on it. And we all know that Vinnie Vincent
Yeah.
played lead on most of the album for sure. And then, yeah, it was just really, really good, solid album. What a comeback! This is kind of like their permanent vacation per se, if you want to kind of put an analogy to it, like with
Mm-hmm.
Aerosmith. Even though it didn't sell like they wanted it to, but considering where they were at this point, they were pretty much left for dead. Everybody gave up on Kiss, but they came back from the dead, recorded a solid, heavy gold album, and got them back on the charts in a more reasonable position at number 45. And then after this, they decide to take the makeup off, and that takes us to none other than 1983's "Lick It Up," which you know, for a band who wore makeup and was always trying to hide from photographers throughout the 70s and early 80s, what better thing to hopefully pick up their sales and get their name back out there than take the makeup off? That was the next logical step. That's what they did. Lick It Up went platinum, got them back in the limelight here with number 24. They did the unmasking right on MTV.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting, the whole concept behind it. Tell us about what you think about the album itself.
Yeah, I look it up. It's a solid album. And Vinnie Vincent does a good job on the guitar, and Exciter. They brought Rick Derringer in to play the solo on that, and he does a solid job there. I mean, Kiss always, and like in the '80s and '90s, they were could have been accused of like doing a lot of trend chasing at this point. I mean, I think they were. I mean, obviously, like the hair metal and the glam metal scene was picking up at '83, so I feel like Kiss was kind of like shifting their sound to kind of fit in with that MTV promotional, kind of like what they were putting out there at the time. But I think it's a pretty solid album. It's fun. It's a fun listen. Yeah. Fits Like a Glove is great. All Hell's Breaking Loose. That's another song I like a lot.
Yeah, that was the second video I believe they made for that album as well. So you got to see that one on MTV quite a bit if you were around in that era. Um, of course, "Lick It Up" was still one of the staple concert staples to this
Mhm.
day here. You know, Oddly enough, that song only reached number 66 on the charts, but man, it got so much airplay on the radio and MTV, and it was all over the place. And I think a lot of it, the makeup really taking the makeup off really was the key to this success on this album for sure. But looking at the actual music on the album, like you said, there's not a bad song on here. Not one song I would call filler at all. Every song you can listen to, some more than others. Million to One, what a phenomenal song. That's one of those ones that just never really got its just due. And then Paul Stanley brought that back out on his last solo tour when he came out with his last solo album, Live to Win. Um, they still did a handful of these songs. Well, like Fits Like a Glove, Young and Wasted. They were still playing those on the Animalized tour. Um, Oddly enough, Exciter, Kiss always put a lot of stock in their first song on the album, and for some reason, Exciter never really got any push from them. Surprisingly, I mean, I thought Exciter was a pretty cool song,
Mhm.
but you would have figured that they would have opened the album with All Hell's Breaking Loose, wouldn't you? That was kind of weird how they picked Exciter over All Hell's Breaking Loose to open the album up, but
Yeah.
it was I think Exciter is definitely one of the underrated gems on this album too. You just never really got its just due, but solid album nevertheless. Not one bad song, like I said, and that's going to take us to the album that always holds a special place in my heart, and that's none other than 1984 Animalize. Back to back platinums. They're back on the right path here. Um, cracked in at number 19 on the charts, their lowest charting album going back since Dynasty. So it's been a few years, a few albums, and then here they are. Even though Gene was off running around doing movies at this time, that kind of left everything in Paul's lap for the most part. Gene did contribute his share of songs on the album, but if you listen to the lyrics to his songs and the songs themselves, for the most part, his album songs on here are like the weakest of the two. Paul's songs really stand out on this album. What do you got for me for this album?
Yeah. Analyze if Mark St. John came in to play guitar on this album. It was his only appearance with the band. He does an okay job. It's nothing overly memorable, but I mean, the, Paul Stanley's vocals are always solid. I mean, the opening track, "I've Had Enough," is solid. You Get All You Can Take is good. I mean, the "Heaven's on Fire" was the big single off the album. When they did a music video for it on MTV that got quite a bit of airplay, and that I still like to listen to that song occasionally. But I mean, it kind of builds on what they did with "Lick It Up," kind of going with that glam metal sound. So, but it's definitely a decent listen.
Yeah, yeah. Animalize definitely to me is that's the tour I got to see him on for the first time, and man, I wish we can go back to that era again. I mean, everybody always says, "Oh, they're better with the makeup on," but in my estimation, maybe because I seen them without the makeup on live first,
Mm.
maybe it just stands out a little bit different to me. Because they didn't the makeup. There was only a few albums they didn't really wear it for. Um, and then they put it back on, obviously, once the reunion happened, and they never took it off since. I was always hoping that they would do like a tour where you'd play like the big cities 2 nights. First night you do it with makeup,
Mm-hmm.
second night you do it without, and then that way you can just kind of focus in on songs from the makeup era, and then the other next night you do focusing on songs from the non-makeup era. I think that would have been a cool concept to do. Obviously they couldn't have could have probably done it in a picked a few of the bigger cities and maybe done it for like a Chicago, New York, Toronto type thing, LA. Could have picked like 10 cities and done it like a tour like that. Because if you're only doing a few shows, the diehards are going to show up from any nearby cities for sure. And
Yeah.
I think that the kind of a concept would have done really well. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always a lot of things. And it's amazing, Kiss, for all the things that they did do with marketing and stuff. There's still a couple things that they left on the table that they should have tried, which I think would have been more beneficial to them. But that is the life of Kiss. So that brings us to the follow up to Animalize, which was Asylum, which came out in the next year, 1985, 1 year later, pretty much. Same month, September. A little bit picked at number 20, which is right around where they were for Animalize, one spot off. But this is where they went under a little bit because it only went gold. And let's hear what you got for us regarding this album.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Kulick comes in on this album, his first album with the band on guitar, and he's a great player. So I've seen him with a bunch of different bands over the years. But yeah, I mean, King of the Mountain is a great opening track. I mean, it's any way you slice it. Who Wants to Be Lonely? I mean, it's pretty much more of the same from the Lick It Up, Animalize, Asylum. They're kind of following along that same like trajectory with the sound of the music and the type of songs they're writing. It's a decent album. Another kind of one that's middle of the pack for me. So
Yeah, I mean, compared to the last few, I thought there were some chinks in the armor here a little bit with Asylum. Um, obviously tears are falling, and the videos, Who Wants to Be Lonely, All Night. They're decent songs. They definitely stand out. They're very strong compared to the rest of the album. And then the rest of the album kind of falls like by the wayside. Although I do like pretty much every song on this album, but I think it just needed a few more stronger songs, and it would have
mm,
done a lot well. It could have probably pushed it into platinum for sure. Like you said, King of the Mountain, what a great opener. That's what a way to start the album. The pounding drums of Eric Carr there. Sadly, this tour I never got to see because they never played Buffalo on it. That was back in the non-internet area where we never got a chance to always see tour dates until it was too late. So if you wanted to go down to like Rochester or Syracuse or wherever, Toronto, wherever's nearby, you might have found out a little too late. But I would have liked to have seen this tour for sure. But that could be another thing too. They didn't market the tour right, which didn't help promote the album
mm,
properly either. You got to pick the right cities, folks.
yeah,
And Buffalo was bypassed for whatever reason. I guess they didn't like the attendance. on the Animalized tour, because they did use a smaller. They used the odd, but it was like a they had half of it curtained off, so it didn't have like the full capacity of as if you were playing the whole odd. It gave it more of a concert bowl feeling. They kept always describing it as, but it would have been cool to see that show tour, and it just shames me that I was never able to.
Hmm.
All right, so that's going to take us to 1987 now. This is they skipped 86. They didn't. So this is 2 years down the road from Asylum, and they come back with Crazy Nights. Another platinum album puts them back on the map here. Uh, Album reaches number 18. All right, what do you got for me on this one here?
Yeah, Crazy Nights. It's they. This is one where they really lost me again. I like the songs just don't. I mean, there's not a lot of like hard hitting stuff on here. They started introducing keyboards and synthesizers, kind of more of that pop metal sound. I mean, I always call it lazy nights because it just seems like they didn't really put a lot of heart into the songwriting here. I mean, the crazy nights, it's not very memorable. It's just kind of repetitive. Reason to Live sounds like it could have been recorded by Survivor and it would have been even better, but because it's not really, it doesn't feel like a Kiss song to me. But I mean, in '87, I mean, you could put out an album like this, even if it wasn't perfect, and you could still go platinum just because of the strength of the market at that time. So I feel like that's kind of what played into that.
Well, I always liked this album. Um, on my end of it, obviously this is I actually got to see this tour twice, so maybe seeing the tour twice, and for me it's different. Obviously, like you said, you never got to see them
Mm-hmm.
till later on, so obviously you're coming in later, just like I did for the first few Kiss albums, because I didn't realize about them until well into the fact. A lot of people do call this album not their favorites, and it usually ranks a little bit lower than the middle of the pack even. A lot of people, like you said, it don't really hold this album up in high regard at all. It's interesting how you look at this album from two different perspectives, and to me, I think it's got three good gems on here, which I always really these are, I never get sick of these songs, and that is the title cut, Crazy Nights. Obviously, the song still means something to the band because that they added it back in the farewell tour after not playing it hardly at all prior to that. So it's not like the song is a bad song, obviously, but I could see how some people might not get it or appreciate it or like it at all. Every dog has his opinion, that's for sure. Um, my weird take is Reason to Live. This video was on MTV like 24 hours a day. It felt like just a great song. Turn on the Night was another MTV video that followed up on it. These two songs really, for me, I really enjoy them. Those go right up neck and neck with Crazy Nights as my favorite songs on this album. I'm just kind of surprised myself though. Whenever I remember when Reason to Live first came out, I always expected it to be one of those songs that Kiss would always play live from that point forward. Just because of how catchy it is and the video and everything else. And
Mm-hmm.
it's weird. They pretty much, after the Hot in the Shade tour, they pretty much never touched it again, which it's kind of weird. So that's why when I hear it, I don't hear it that often, but when I do, it really brings back some good memories. Even though the band decided they just for whatever reason never really liked the song. I guess if they since they refused to play it anymore. Yeah, I mean, you got to remember Gene was still off doing movies at this point, and you can see a lot of his songs were kind of like mailed in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I do like "Good Girl Gone Bad" is probably my favorite Gene song on here. But I think this album has a couple really good Paul Stanley gems. I know some people, I've seen it where they trash My Way, but I think that's a very catchy song. Bang Bang You, that was a concert staple for that tour. I'll Fight Hell to Hold You. Just some really good solid Paul songs here. I think one of the things too was it also contains one of my least favorite Kiss songs, which was No No No. I don't know if you're familiar with that song,
Yep.
but
Mhm.
got like I mentioned, I got to see this tour twice, and on the about a month apart. They played Toronto first in December, and then like right after the Toronto show, they announced another leg, and then surely enough, they put Buffalo on that leg. So that was awesome.
Mhm.
So I seen Toronto, and they had No 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 in the set. So it was kind of I hate that song. There's always certain songs that always jerk people the wrong way, or they just don't like it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So what was cool when they came to Buffalo, they actually kicked that song out. I'm expecting them to play it because so far up to that point in the set, every song was exactly what they played in Toronto. And then all of a sudden, Paul starts talking, and all of a sudden he goes, "If you all want a little bit of rock and roll, shout it out loud." And they crank right into it. And I went nuts. I couldn't believe it because here you are replacing this horrible No No No, and you're putting in "Shout It Out Loud," a song that I hadn't gotten to see live at that point yet because they really weren't playing it much during the non-makeup era till that tour, that leg of the tour. So it was pretty cool to see that in its place, and that just made the said Buffalo show stand out so much more than the Toronto show. And to me, that was probably one of my favorite Kiss shows ever. Because Eric Carr was there,
Mhm.
and they put on a really great show that night, definitely. So it's certain things stand out for certain reasons for everybody. And that's why these album rankings are cool, because it's interesting sometimes hearing the stories and the reasons why you might like a particular album or a particular song, because to you it could mean a lot more than to somebody else. So that's going to take us another 2 years down the road here. 1989, they come out with Hot in the Shade. Peaks at number 29. And this is where they go back down to gold. And to tell you the truth, if you want to, and oddly enough, believe it or not, Crazy Nights is their last platinum album. So how do you like that? Not easy to do, but they did it. That's I guess like you said, just throw some keyboards on there and you're guaranteed to go platinum.
Yep.
So what do you got for Hot in the Shade? Let's see what your take is on this one.
Yeah, I mean, Hot in the Shade, another one I don't really care for a whole lot. I mean, Prisoner of Love and Silver Spoon were two songs I kind of liked, but at 15 songs, I feel like the album's just way too long. They could have shortened it up maybe to like 8 to 10 songs. It might have been better. I mean, obviously, like Forever was the big ballad off this song that Paul Stanley co-wrote with Michael Bolton, and that's you still hear that on like the ballad collections a lot. But they I guess this was like to the tail end of the '80s. I mean, hair metal was on its way out, so I guess obviously they kind of this album's kind of along that same line. But then, I mean, their album after this, they started getting back to what they did best. So
Yeah, Hot in the Shade for me, I'm pretty much thinking it would probably fall in the middle of the pack. Just looking at the album itself, I think you kick it off in good style with Rise to It. Then you mix in a Gene song, Betrayed, which is probably the best Gene song on the album. And, Hide Your Heart obviously is one of those unique songs because Ace Frehley also recorded it on one of his solo albums. So, that was pretty cool. Seeing two different versions of the same song from including an ex Kiss member. Um, like you said, Forever, what a great ballad. That song, like you said, written with Michael Bolton. And yeah, it's just interesting that Ace chose to do Hide Your Heart. Obviously, Paul Stanley wrote it along with Desmond Child, the song doctor there, and Holly Knight. And they he did a lot of writing with Desmond Child over the years. And You Love Me to Hate You was another one he co-wrote with Desmond. I think like you said, the album was way, way, way too long. Trying to cater to the CD crowd.
Hmm.
Let's jam on as many songs as we can. And that's what hurts this album, because if you took like the 10 best songs from this album, you'd have a really, really good album. But there's a lot of filler on here. Um, Not much more to really add other than that. This album definitely, had it been shorter, I think it would have been better, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And that's going to take us to, like you said, another comeback here in a way for this band. Came out in 1992, so they took a few years off here, and they resurfaced with Revenge, which peaks at number 6 on the Billboard album charts, and they're still maintaining the gold status at this point. And tell us about your take on this one.
Yeah, I like Revenge a lot. I think Bob Ezrin came back and kind of brought back that heavier sound that they had gotten away from for a while. I mean, Unholy is a great Gene song. Domino is another great Gene song on here. I feel like he really found like some of his better material for this album. So, and I mean, every time I look at you, it was great. Paralyzed, and obviously Eric Carr passed away, so Eric Singer, this is his first appearance in the band. But it's just definitely a solid return to form, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they were still getting a lot of airplay here with Unholy. You would hear that on the radio, and Domino, and I Just Wanna. That was another one that you'd hear on the radio. So I think they picked the right songs to play on the radio here. Um, you know, also God Gave Rock and Roll to You appears on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they
Which
still do that live a lot.
yeah, I'm not really sold on that song too much. I mean, they
No.
have way better songs, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they did a good job on it. Obviously it's a cover, but
Yeah.
Revenge. Yeah, I mean, I think another album that might be just a smidge too long. It's got 12 songs. It does have the Car Jam 81 on there, which is pretty cool tribute there. Kind of gave Eric a little something on the album. And obviously they dedicated the album to him. But there's a bunch of filler on here in my estimation that I really never got past. So, like you said, I think this one for me is going to fall somewhere in the middle of the pack, even though it's got some really good, solid songs on it. I think just overall as a complete album, it's just not there compared to a lot of the other albums that they have. So this is pretty much, everybody thought at this point it was going to be the end of Kiss, with this particular lineup. So they only really last like one album. But a lot of the things that took place here with the grunge scene really coming into full play here, and then finally Kiss has their reunion in '96, and that got the original four members back together. So they actually made Carnival of Souls, which finally saw the light of day in '97, but obviously it was actually recorded sooner. It was more like recorded in late '95, early '96. So that could be another thing that kind of hurt this album, because it never really came out when it should have. So it came out in the middle of their reunion tour or shortly thereafter. And this is the same lineup as the previous album, Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
But man, did these guys take a right turn here into trying to, you know, get into the grunge scene for some reason. I don't understand why they tried to do it. It's kind of like what they did with the Elder, just made a complete turn and totally did not. I did not see this coming, and I also did not enjoy this album whatsoever. I mean, I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. What's your take on it?
No, yeah, I mean, this is a tough one for me. I mean, the idea of it is okay, and like some of the music and the guitar, the heaviness of it, I kind of like, but I just don't buy it. It doesn't seem very true to me. Like I can't. It's hard for me to buy Paul Stanley being like like an alt rock or a grunge artist at that time. It doesn't it seems kind of forced. So I just can't get into it. I mean, Hate and Rain were two songs that I kind of liked, but it seems very phony to me, like they're just trying to be something they're not. So
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Carnival of Souls, obviously, if you look back on it, I'm not sure if it is their least seller, but it's got to be close
mhm.
to their least selling album of all time.
Yeah,
Oddly enough, it made number 27 on the charts, but I think that a lot of it had to do with the success of the reunion tour. So when somebody saw the new Kiss album out there, hey, yeah, let's get this. We just seen them in tour; they were great. So I think they sold a lot of copies that they did sell was basically just off of the Kiss reunion tour.
hmm
You know, oddly enough, but they finally come out with an album that's featuring at least the original four appear on here in some aspects.
yeah,
Some people might say, "Hey, it's the original lineup," but you got to dig deeper and see that Ace and Peter did not play on every track. Although they have their vocals all over the place on the album, but they did not play on every track on here. And I think this album is interesting. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
yeah. I think, I mean, other than the title track, nothing really stood out for me on this album. I mean, I think it would have been better had they found a way to make it work with the original four playing all together, but clearly it wasn't going to happen. So, and I think the material suffers because of that. Because I mean, they kind of sold the fans on the fact that all four were back, but you have to kind of like decipher who plays on what song, and it's not very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not their worst album, but nowhere near what I was hoping for. Let's put it that way. Obviously, Psycho Circus is the song that
Hmm
everybody knows. They still play that one a lot too. At least
Yeah,
they
they played
were.
it live the first time I saw them.
Yeah. You know, um, I don't know. We Are One stands out a little bit. That's probably the best Gene song on the album. Some people will tell you Within is okay. I don't know. The Ace song Into the Void isn't bad,
Mm.
but overall, I expected better and was very disappointed overall with the album. The tour, on the other hand, was pretty cool, but the album itself left a little bit to be desired, unfortunately. I mean, it did give them one of their highest charting albums up to that point at number three. They never really cracked. Love Gun went four, but three that at that point it was their highest charting album, but it was broken later on here with one of the last
Mhm.
two. It did go gold though, and that's their last time a Kiss album gets certified. So not bad overall if it lands gold, but I think that one, you know, could have been better. So
Mhm.
that was 98, and then this is gonna next album they record is Sonic Boom, and that comes out in October of 2009. Peaks at number two, so that album remains to date their highest charting album. Was never certified, but what do you got for us regarding Sonic Boom here?
Yeah, I mean it's a solid album. I think. I mean with obviously the retooled lineup they had with Tommy Thayer on guitar. I mean live it's good. I mean the Russian Roulette was the song I had singled out on this one that I kind of liked. But I mean I remember the album coming out, but it really didn't get that much radio play at all. So it kind of came and went very quickly. I mean I don't feel like it really made that big of an impression on people, but
Yeah, I mean this album got in concert. Obviously, they played Modern Day Delilah, which is kind of like the lead track there. I thought Never Enough stood out. That was one of the better songs on the album, but I actually liked Say Yeah. Say Yeah is actually my favorite song off this album. So they managed to play that one live as well. I mean, Kiss 2009. Did we ever think we were going to get another album at this point? Because you figure the last one before this was 1998. So you're talking what, 11 years down the road here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely not the worst album, but, I mean, we'll take it, I guess. Gave us a few more good songs to add to the old Kiss collection here. And 3 years later, out of nowhere, we get Monster, which was kind of a surprise here. Coming out in 2012, peaked at number 3. Monster, what do you got for us on this one?
Yeah, Monster, I actually prefer it a little bit over Sonic Boom, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, both albums are kind of interchangeable for me, but I like Out of This World and Freak. I thought was a pretty good song for Paul on this album. But and obviously they had a big tour in 2012 with Motley Crue, so that was a big thing for them.
Yeah, Monster. I think, like you said, Out of This World definitely is one of the ones that stands out. Obviously the one that the first song they released and were playing all over the place on the internet there was Hell or Hallelujah. I believe that definitely they played that one live. Um, I liked Long Way Down and Take Me Down Below. Those other two songs definitely stood out. Wall of Sound. I think there are more. I think this album is a smidge better than Sonic Boom. It would have been nice to see a little bit more stronger of an album to close out their career. But considering all the albums they released and everything, to see
Mhm.
Monster, at this point, it looks like this probably will be their final album that they make and release here. So definitely not their worst, but once again, just hard to compete with what they already made at this point. It's when you got a catalog as strong as these guys do, you're going to have issues where it's going to be hard to beat certain albums because they made so many good ones. We talked about some of them that didn't quite meet our standards, but I think there's definitely more albums that were better or that were good than as opposed to weak, in my
Mhm.
estimation here. So, all right, so let's get that takes care of the Kiss ranking the studio albums, and let's go ahead and start listing off what we got. What do you have for number 20?
Yeah, number 20, I have Crazy Nights.
Wow, I guess you really didn't like that album. uh, and you said so, but I didn't think it would be that bad. Wow, number 20, Crazy Nights. Interesting. All right. Well, mine is Carnival of Souls, which you probably were able to decipher after what I said about that album.
Mhm.
So, what do you got for 19?
19, I had Hot in the Shade.
Okay, Hot in the Shade. And mine is The Elder. And that brings us to number 18.
Yeah, 18, I had Carnival of Souls.
Okay. So, that one definitely not falling into favoritism out of our rankings here. For me, I got Sonic Boom.
All right,
All right.
17, I had The Elder.
Okay. I've got Monster.
Okay, 16, I had Monster.
So we're close on that.
Mhm.
I've got Psycho Circus.
Yeah. 15, I had Psycho Circus.
I've got Hotter Than Hell.
Yep. 14, I had Sonic Boom.
Okay. 14, oddly enough, I had Dress to Kill.
13, I had Unmasked.
I've got Dynasty.
12, I had Animalize.
All right. I've got, shockingly, Love Gun.
11, I had Dress to Kill.
I've got Revenge.
10, Dynasty.
Unmasked.
8, or 9. Yeah, I think we're on 9.
9. Yep.
9, I had, yeah, 9, I had Asylum.
Okay. I've got Hot in the Shade.
Okay, 8. I had to look it up.
I've got Rock and Roll Over.
7. Hotter than hell.
Okay. I've got the first album, Kiss.
6. Revenge.
I've got Asylum.
5. Rock and roll over.
5. I've got Creatures of the Night.
4. I've Kiss.
Lick It Up.
3. I've Destroyer.
I've got Crazy Nights.
2. Love Gun.
I've got Animalize.
And 1 for me is Creatures of the Night.
I've got Destroyer. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them we were in the same area on.
Yeah.
But definitely, I had a feeling we were going to be, a little bit different on some of the main ones here, which was kind of surprised that where Love Gun fell for me myself. I figured it would have been a little bit higher up there, a little bit better ranking, but for some reason I just like the other albums a little bit better. Were there any that kind of stood out for you that you were kind of surprised where they ended up?
I think I went back and listened to Revenge. I think I like it more than now than I did when I first heard it. I didn't think it was going to be top 10, but because I tend to like the earlier Kiss better. But for the later period, that's one of the better ones.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah, there was another one that stood out to me too that I was kind of surprised. Creatures. I actually thought Creatures of the Night would be a little bit higher, but for me, for some reason, I mean, number 5 is good, but I thought it would be more like top 3. Unfortunately, the way it all shook out, they were like there was like 3 albums that were neck and neck, and it was Crazy Nights, Lick It Up, and Creatures of the Night. So the way I had to break it all on down, that's just the way they fell there.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like real close. Like I'm serious. Any one of those could have been number. It could Creatures. It could have boosted it right to number 3 at that point. That's how close these are ranked here. So, all right. So now I want to go ahead and real quick. What's your take on the ranking of the solo albums for the Gene, Peter, Ace, and Paul? What do you got for start off with like your number 4 on down to your favorite?
4 would be the Peter album.
That's the same one I got too for number
Yeah,
4.
we might have the same ranking, but like 3, I had Gene.
Yep, same here.
2, Paul.
Yeah, this is where we're going to differ a little bit. A lot of people, I know everybody, a lot of people really love this Ace album. I love it too, but I just like Paul's better. But Ace is number 2 for me, and obviously,
well, 1's Ace, and I just always like that album a lot.
Definitely a solid album. Like we said, for a guy that only first recorded his first vocal on a Kiss record, the album before they recorded these solo albums, that's pretty amazing. How well his album came out. But for me, the Paul Stanley is just, I love the variety on his solo album, and I just really love the music and his vocals. I think just overall, I really thought that Paul's album, I just liked it a little bit more than Ace's. You won't hear too many people say that, but there are a few. I guess I'm in the minority on that one, but I mean, I always go back to the Paul one and the Ace one for sure. Gene here and there, but I gotta admit, I really don't listen to the Peter one.
No.
But that's weird because they were the first, one of the first major bands to ever have all 4 main members to record a solo album, and it's cool how they managed to put them all out on the same day and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. All right. Sounds good. I appreciate the time here. I thought this was a cool ranking here. We really dug in deep into the Kiss here. So, yeah. So, go ahead and leave your comments. Let's leave some of your rankings here. If you guys don't want to do all 20, list your top 5 Kiss albums or list your top 10, make it short or whatever you want to do. Any comments here are greatly appreciated. And we'll probably chime in on, any comments you guys leave. If you want to lambaste me for my ranking on a couple of these albums. I can take it, but it's always good to hear
Hmm.
opinions, and I appreciate yours, Dave. I really respect a lot of your opinions. You really know music pretty real well, and that's one of the reasons why we bring you on board here because of your knowledge and your take on things. And I really can't wait till we get to the next group of next artists that we end up doing here. So once again, thank you for your time, and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks.